there, welcome to the 13th episode of Under the Radar. Glad to be back. It's been a little while. I was actually intending on dropping a bunch more episodes last week and just got caught up, been approving mixes on the new Slave to Servant album. Finished up with that and now it's being mastered, which I'll talk about a little more at the end of the episode. But in today's episode, I'm going to showcase another Chicago band, a pop punk band, kind of in the vein of I would say like Smoking Popes, Alkaline Trio, Tuesday, little Alistair in there, kind of that vibe. A band that I was friends with called August Premiere, and this is their debut EP called Balloons, Everything's Okay, and this is the reissue of that EP. I don't have the original pressing anymore. I used to have it, but this comes with two bonus tracks on here, one instrumental and then one bonus with vocals. So it ends up being a 10-track, basically an LP instead of an EP, like it originally was. But the label that this is released on is a label called LLR Records, also known as Little League Records. And Little League Records was owned by Johnny Minardi. I think it was started by him and another friend of mine named Sean Van Vliet. And the first release they ever put out was August Premiere's Balloons, Everything's Okay. I will say that the song Tuckered Out is probably one of my favorites from back in the day. First time I saw August Premiere was at the Fireside Bowl with Split Habit, Tabuku, and Knockout, I believe was headlining. And Knockout was signed to Fearless Records at the time, but hadn't recorded and or dropped their new album for Fearless yet. I think the biggest band Fearless had put out at the time was At the Drive-In, whom had just broken up after releasing probably one of the greatest albums I've ever heard called Relationship of Command. But anyway, it was kind of a big deal that they were on that label, and Knockout led the way for a lot of different bands in this scene, August Premiere being the next one that would jump from LLR Records to Fuel by Ramen. So at the time, August Premiere was grinding a bunch. I remember watching them at the Knights of Columbus as well, with a lot of different bands like 504 Plan and Fall Out Boy and Remember Maine and all the up-and-coming bands that were going to LLR or other like local labels that were playing in the scene. And actually, August Premiere and the band 504 Plan, which was the second release on LLR, they ended up opening the Metro for Alistair and Show Off. I remember, I think it was June or May of 2002. And it was kind of a big deal. It was like, whoa, like a local band is playing the Metro that we know. like that's, you know, kind of just started out, put out their first release. It was really cool to see that. And it was Show Off's last show. It turned out being August Premiere's last show for a while, I think, because the singer and guitar player, Chris Rogner from August Premiere, went on to play in Alistair and tour with Alistair in the summer of 2002 when they dropped Last Stop Suburbia on Drive Thru Records. And this was the summer when Drive Thru Records had kind of bought their own stage at Warped Tour and did the Drive Thru stage and had different local bands and smaller indie bands that were touring, you know, open for their bands on that stage. I remember like Motion City played, and Glassjaw played the stage, and I don't know what other bands, but a lot of different bands, some of which ended up signing to bigger labels, obviously. And but anyway, at the time, LLR Records had put out this sampler of drive-through bands and Little League bands, and I think it was available at the Hot Topic at the Woodfield Mall, and it was available at local shows too. So after that sampler came out, something even cooler happened. Again, this is the first band that, to my knowledge, that made it onto like a comp like this, but there was the Plea for Peace Foundation, owned by Mike Park from Asian Man Records, and they put out this series of Take Action Plea for Peace benefit compilations, and August Premiere made it to the second one with the song Tuckered Out. And that was like mind-blowing to me at the time that a local band made it on. I mean, the bands on this comp were, some of them were really big at the time and some of them hadn't quite blown up, but I mean, if you were to look at the bands on this double disc, it's pretty good. Anyhow, after Chris got back from tour with Alistair, I guess what the story goes is that Vinny from Less Than Jake heard the band. I may be wrong, but I think Vinny from Less Than Jake had heard that song Tuckered Out on the Plea for Peace compilation and signed them to Fuel by Ramen. I think it was like fall of 2002. So I believe that was the second band to actually sign to a big indie label, even though I will say Fuel by Ramen at the time wasn't very big. It had, I'd say its biggest band at the time was The Stereo, which is an amazing band, and if you have never heard The Stereo, you need to do yourself a favor and check out The Stereo. They had 3 full lengths, 1 EP, one of the most influential pop rock bands ever. There would be no Fall Out Boy or Motion City, or I wouldn't even probably play music or sound the way I do without The Stereo. So yeah, check out The Stereo, please, if you've never heard that band. But like I said, Fuel by Ramen came in and swiped this band up, and this is a sampler from when they first got signed, and Tuckered Out was on here, and that was when they were beginning to track their first full length. And a lot of people don't know this, but the band August Premiere is responsible for getting Fall Out Boy their record deal with Fuel by Ramen, even though actually Fall Out Boy, there's a little more details to that story. There was a little bit more funding going on from a major label angle on that, but definitely wouldn't have put out a record on Fuel by Ramen had August Premiere not recommended them to the label. I'd say my second favorite song on this EP was a song called Radiant.
Trigonomic radiance, I'd be remiss if I didn't say I've missed you. In the last 2 years, you've been around, hear the sound as I live vicariously through your frowns, and smile for another month or so. I anticipate would it be so cold if not for old times that fuck things up. It seems a month-long truce has no merit. When I pretend that I didn't hear a sound, when I cut you loose and fall. When I pretend that I didn't hear a sound, when I cut you loose and fall.
A lot of good jams on this disc. A bunch of the songs, I think there was at least 3 songs off this that were re-recorded later on their debut and final record for Fuel by Ramen, which was called Fireworks and Alcohol, and I'll be covering that in another episode. The song Baker's Song, which is the opening track to that album, was also on this, and I loved the version of that on Fireworks and Alcohol. It was so good. Funny side note, Mickey the drummer told me once that there was supposed to be an actual second EP to come out. I don't know if it was a joke, but it was called Blood, Everything Sucks, to kind of counteract the Balloons, Everything's Okay. Anyway, love this band. One of the first ones to sign that was from our, I guess, generation of bands at the time. Yeah, mad shout outs to Mickey, Chris, Danny, and Mark, and all of AP. They did put out some other records later. You can check them out on Discogs. I think you could probably check out Fireworks and Alcohol on iTunes, since it was a Fuel by Ramen release. Great band. So yeah, check out August premiere. I just wrapped up the mixing of my new record, Escape Babylon, with the amazing James Paul Wisner, as I had mentioned in a previous episode. But to kind of add a little more fuel onto that fire, I reached out to somebody who I never thought in a million years I would ever get to master my record. And turns out that became a reality. And that man is the amazingly talented Howie Weinberg. Howie mastered Nirvana's Nevermind, albums by Red Hot Chili Peppers, Beastie Boys, Faith No More, Ben Folds 5, Deftones, Thrice, Public Enemy, Ice Cube, Smashing Pumpkins. Just insane, this guy's discography. Feel free to check out HowieWeinbergMastering.com and his Wikipedia page as well. It's just an insane discography that this man has put out. I mean, like 200 gold records and platinum records, a multi-Grammy nominee. Anyway, he just mastered this album with analog gear, and it sounds so amazing. And I'm so excited to unleash some of these songs on you guys, and I'm hoping to really push this thing at some point. But in the meantime, I'm going to be releasing an acoustic single soon for a song that actually will be on the album, but this is a stripped down version of it that I'm going to include on my singles collection, which I'm working on kind of getting a release date and getting the CDs pressed for the singles collection of all the stuff that I put out thus far on iTunes and Spotify and all that good stuff. So be on the lookout, slavetoservant.com, facebook.com/slavetoservant, slavetoservant.bandcamp.com. Check out Slave to Servant on Spotify, iTunes, and be sure to check out Slave to Servant on Instagram as well. I should be putting together another episode for you very soon, and I look forward to doing that. In the meantime, thanks for your time.